Imagine you walk into an old Tartarian building, and you find Tartarian technical rooms with no purpose and zero documentation. Not a dirty basement, not a storage room, but clean, precise rooms with heavy metal doors, holes cut into the walls, pipes that run straight into stone and vanish. Thick panels, mounts, and brackets, like a machine once stood here. But the machine is gone, and the strangest part, the plans stay silent. Not in the blueprints, not in the archives, not in the reports. Like someone cut these rooms out of history, like a missing frame in a film. You touch the wall, and you see bolt marks, scratches, weird symbols. Like something worked here for a long time, loudly, and for a reason. Then one question hits you. If these rooms had no purpose, why were they built like lives depended on them? And who made sure we would never learn the truth? Lviv, winter 1997. A restoration team breaks through plaster. In the basement of a civic building erected in the 1880s, the building file lists the space behind the wall as storage closet, sealed 1953. They expect dust, they expect brick, they expect nothing. The sledgehammer punches through, cold air pushes back. Behind the plaster, a door, iron hinges, original. The frame is stone, not wood. The lock mechanism shows no rust, as if the room had been breathing all along. They pry it open. The beam of a flashlight cuts across a chamber roughly 4 meters square. The walls are brick, but not blackened by soot or time. The mortar between them is laid with a precision you do not expect in a utility space. Heavy iron brackets protrude from the eastern wall at shoulder height, spaced exactly 1 meter apart. The floor rings when stepped on, not the dull thud of packed earth, but a hollow metallic note, as if something lies beneath the surface layer. One worker kneels. He taps the floor with a chisel. The sound echoes back. The building file says, storage closet, yet the room has a vent stack rising vertically through 3 floors. The stack is not part of the heating system. It does not connect to any chimney. It simply rises, stops beneath the central dome, and ends in a sealed copper plate. The room also has a channel cut into the western wall, lined with thin sheets of copper that were later painted over. The channel is too narrow for pipes, too shallow for cables. It tracks the wall at a perfect diagonal, then disappears into the ceiling. And there is no practical way to carry boxes in. The door frame is too narrow. The corridor outside bends sharply. The room was not laid out for storage. It was laid out for something else. The restoration lead photographs the space. He measures the brackets. He sketches the vent geometry. Then he checks the original construction ledger kept in the municipal archive. The ledger lists every corridor, every vault, every window and door on all 5 floors. But between line 47 and line 49, there is no line 48. The sequence jumps from basement corridor, western wing, to vault, coal storage, with no mention of the room in between. Not crossed out, not amended, simply missing, as if the line was never meant to exist. He asks the city archivist. She opens 3 more volumes. None reference the space. She checks the renovation reports from 1953, the year the door was sealed. The report describes closure of unused storage areas, but gives no inventory of what was removed and no plan of what was closed. When pressed, she flips to a page that should list the basement's full layout. The page is there, but a section has been cut away, not torn but removed with a blade, leaving only a clean, trimmed edge. The workers leave the door open while they finish other sections of the building. On the 3rd day, one of them returns to the basement to retrieve a tool. He stops at the threshold. The air inside feels different, not colder, not warmer, just denser. He describes it later as pressure without weight, like standing in a stairwell when wind moves through a building, except there is no wind. He steps inside. When he brushes the iron brackets with his hand, they hum faintly. Not a vibration he can feel, but a sensation he can almost hear, like the metal is remembering what it used to hold. He leaves quickly. The room is sealed again 2 weeks later. The restoration report files it under structural anomaly, non-functional. No photographs are included in the final documentation, but the team keeps their notes. And 3 years later, in another city, another restoration crew finds another room. Same brackets, same vent geometry, same copper channels hidden under plaster, same silence in the records. Now the question is not whether the room exists. The question is what it was built to do, and who made sure no one could ever prove it. Prague, Spring 2003. The National Technical Museum hires an archivist to digitize building records from the late 19th century. Her name is Eva Moravkova. She has worked with municipal files for 16 years. She knows what complete documentation looks like, and what accidental gaps usually look like too. She begins with the former exhibition hall constructed in 1891. The building once hosted industrial fairs. Now it serves as administrative offices. The archive is unusually rich. Floor plans, contractor invoices, material shipments, even payroll logs for the stonemasons. On paper, it is perfect. Every window frame, every door hinge, every gas line and water pipe, except one section of the basement. The floor plan shows the western corridor. It shows the eastern storage vault, and between them, blank space, not labeled under construction, not marked future expansion. Simply blank, like the draftsman's pen lifted and never came back down. Bea checks the inventory ledger. The list runs chronologically, room by room, starting from the ground floor and descending. Line 182 describes the western corridor, dimensions, brick count, door specifications. Line 184 describes the storage vault, ceiling height, ventilation, lock type. Line 183 does not exist. She flips back. She counts again. The numbering is correct. The handwriting is consistent. The ink density matches the surrounding entries. Yet the sequence jumps as if one line was removed after the ink dried, cleanly, deliberately, and without leaving a trace on the page. Next, she opens the contractor's material log. Stone delivery for the basement lists tonnage enough for 2 corridors and 3 vaults. Yet only 1 vault and 1 corridor appear in the final plans. The excess stone, roughly 12 tons, has no assigned purpose anywhere in the record. Eva contacts the museum director. He arranges access to the basement. They descend through a maintenance stairwell, not marked on any visitor map. The western corridor is exactly as documented. The storage vault matches its description. But between them, hidden behind a later addition of concrete block, there is a door. The door is older than the concrete. The frame is original stonework. The lock is absent, replaced decades ago with a simple latch, like someone wanted it closed, but not officially sealed. Eva opens it. The chamber is smaller than the one in Lviv, roughly 3 meters square. The walls are lined with ceramic tiles, not common brick. The tiles are white, unmarked, and show no signs of water damage despite a century of basement moisture. A stone plinth rises from the center of the floor, 1 meter high, with 4 bolt holes drilled in a perfect square pattern. Whatever once sat there left only rust stains, and the faint outline of a rectangular base, like a machine was lifted out and the room was told to forget it ever existed. The ceiling has a shaft. The shaft is not a chimney. It does not vent to the roof. It rises through 2 floors and stops beneath the building's central tower, terminating in a sealed iron plate, identical in purpose and placement to the one found in Lviv. Eva photographs the space. She measures the plinth, then she returns upstairs and searches for any mention of equipment installed in the basement during the building's operational years. She finds one reference. A maintenance note from 1897 describes routine inspection of basement apparatus. The note provides no details, no serial numbers, no manufacturer, no drawing attached. Just one word that should not be there if the room was storage apparatus. The following year's maintenance log contains no such entry, nor do any records after 1898. The mention appears once, then vanishes. She searches for renovation permits. In 1952, a permit was issued to modernize storage capacity in the basement. The permit mentions sealing unused chambers and installing partition walls. The chambers are not named. The architect's signature is illegible, as if it was smeared, rushed, or copied badly on purpose. Eva requests the original permit from the city archive. The clerk returns with a folder. The folder contains the permit's cover page and approval stamp. The rest of the document is missing. When Eva asks where the remaining pages are, the clerk checks the file log. According to the log, the permit was filed complete in 1953. No withdrawals, no noted damage, No, pages removed for review. No, lost in transfer. The pages simply are not there. Eva writes her report. She describes the chamber, she notes the missing documentation. She includes photographs and measurements. The museum director reads it, thanks her for the thoroughness, and files it internally. The report is never published, but Eva keeps a copy. And 2 years later, when a restoration crew in Bucharest contacts her about a nearly identical room, she realizes the pattern extends beyond 2 cities, and beyond coincidence. The rooms are real. The documentation is not. Bucharest, autumn 2005. A structural engineer named Andrei Constantinescu receives a contract to assess foundation stability in a government building erected in 1889. The building once served as a telegraph hub. Now it houses municipal records. During the inspection, his team discovers subsidence in the basement's northwest corner. The floor has settled unevenly. Andrei orders exploratory drilling to check for voids beneath the foundation. The drill breaks through at 2 meters depth. The bit drops into empty space. They widen the opening. A camera lowered on a cable reveals a chamber sealed below the current basement floor. The chamber was not filled in. It was simply built over, entombed beneath a newer concrete slab poured. Sometime in the mid-20th century, Andrei petitions for excavation access. The ministry approves. His team removes enough concrete to create an entry point. The room measures 4 meters by 5. The walls are brick-lined with thin copper sheeting, now green with patina, but intact. Ceramic insulators protrude from the northern wall at regular intervals, identical to those used in early electrical systems. A stone plinth occupies the center, raised half a meter above the floor. Bolt marks scar its surface in a radial pattern, as if something circular once anchored there. Most peculiar of all, the room has a shaft. The shaft rises vertically, passing through the modern basement ceiling and continuing upward through the building's core. Andrei's team traces it with a probe. It climbs 4 stories and terminates directly beneath the building's original central tower, a decorative spire that now serves no function. Andrei searches the building archive for construction records. The original blueprints show basement storage and mechanical rooms. No chamber appears in the location where his team found it. He checks amendments and renovation files. Nothing references the space below the floor. He finds one photograph dated 1903. The image shows a basement corridor during an equipment installation. In the background, barely visible, a hatch lies open in the floor. Thick cables descend into the opening. A man in work clothes stands beside it, holding a tool Andrei cannot identify. Andrei locates a second print of the same photograph in a separate archive. The image is identical, except for one detail. The hatch is gone. The floor appears solid and unbroken. The cables are absent. The workman remains, but his hands are empty, as if the object he once held was painted out along with the hatch. He contacts Eva Moravkova in Prague. She sends him her report on the chamber beneath the exhibition hall. The dimensions differ, the tile work differs, but the signature is unmistakable. Copper channels, ceramic insulators, vertical shafts aligned with towers, and bolt marks where something heavy once stood. Andrei writes to the Ministry of Culture. He requests access to telegraph records from the building's operational period. The ministry responds 6 weeks later. The records were destroyed in a fire during the 1950s. No backup copies exist. He asks when the fire occurred. The official reply states June 1953. The same year, the basement hatch was sealed beneath fresh concrete. Andrei archives his findings. The room is resealed for structural reasons. But before the concrete is poured, he places a small brass marker inside, engraved with a single line, "Chamber discovered 2005, purpose unknown." By then, 3 rooms are documented, 3 cities, 3 identical silences in the records, and the pattern is only beginning to show itself. Krakow, summer 2007. The cloth hall undergoes restoration for its 600th anniversary. The upper floors house a gallery. The basement, according to every tour guide and every official placard, contains historic maintenance niches, used for ventilation and equipment storage during the building's 19th century modernization. A conservation architect named Tomasz Kowalski is tasked with inspecting these niches before they are sealed behind new climate control systems. He expects routine work, Measurements, photos, structural notes, nothing more. The first niche matches expectations. Brick walls, a simple ventilation grate, dusty, cramped, and forgettable. The second niche does not. The room is accessed through a low archway in the basement's southern wall. The entrance is marked on the building map as Ventilation Access, 1880s installation. But when Tomasz steps inside with a measuring tape and camera, the space immediately refuses. Its own label, the chamber is 5 meters deep. The walls are not simple brick, but layered construction, outer brick, inner copper sheeting, and an air gap between them, roughly 10 centimeters wide. The copper is not slapped on as a patch. It is placed with intention. Thin channels are etched into its surface, spiraling outward from the center of each wall panel. The pattern repeats with the kind of consistency you see in engineered parts, not in improvised repairs. The floor has a drain. Tomasz follows it with a probe. The drain does not connect to the city sewer system. It runs laterally for 3 meters, then stops at a sealed chamber he cannot access. Even the drain lining feels wrong. It is glass, not ceramic, not iron, smooth and clean in a place that should be rough, practical, and cheap. Then comes the detail that makes him slow down. The geometry. The ceiling is not flat. It rises in a shallow dome. Directly above, on the ground floor, sits the building's central arcade. And rising through that arcade is a stone pillar supporting the main tower. Tomasz measures the alignment twice. The niche sits precisely beneath the pillar's base, its curved ceiling mirroring the tower's foundation geometry. Like the two spaces were designed as one system, top and bottom, connected through the same center line. If this is ventilation, why build an airflow shape like a dome? If this is maintenance, why copper and glass? If this is storage, why is the entrance too narrow to move anything larger than a toolbox? Tomasz checks the restoration files from previous decades. The room is mentioned twice. In 1954, it is labeled Disused Equipment Chamber. In 1978, the label changes to Ventilation Niche. No note explains the change. No diagram explains the redesign. No memo says what equipment was removed, or why the language suddenly became softer and more ordinary. He asks the head curator about the niche's original purpose. She consults 3 reference texts on the building's history. All describe the basement as containing support infrastructure for 19th century improvements. None specify what that infrastructure actually did. Tomasz returns to the room. He photographs the copper channels. He sketches the drain path. He measures the ceiling curve and compares it to the tower alignment again and again until the numbers stop being coincidence. Then he requests access to the municipal archive to find the original installation. Records from the 1880s. The archive has contractor logs, equipment inventories, even payroll stubs for the workers. But the section covering basement installations is missing. Not the entire ledger, not the entire year, just 16 pages, removed cleanly, leaving only the binding threads where they once sat. Later, a museum tour guide tells visitors the niche was used for air circulation and routine maintenance. The explanation is printed in the Uri official guidebook, neat and confident, like it settles everything. Yet the room has engineered airflow geometry, a drain that leads nowhere, and an alignment that locks it to the tower above like a hidden foundation organ. If it is maintenance, why is it built like the heart of a machine? Tomasz files his report. The niche is sealed behind drywall, the copper stays hidden, and the label stays on the wall, still smiling, still calm, still wrong. The question remains unanswered. Berlin, winter 2009. A graduate student in architectural history named Clara Zimmerman compiles a thesis on civic infrastructure in Central European buildings, constructed between 1870 and 1910. Her research focuses on heating and ventilation systems, the mundane details historians usually skim past. She reads Tomasz Kowalski's report on the Krakow niche, then Eva Moravkova's documentation from Prague, then Andrei Constantinescu's findings in Bucharest. She contacts the restoration team from Lviv and obtains their original photographs. She spreads the images across her desk. 4 cities, 4 buildings. 4 rooms that official records either ignore or explain away with labels that do not fit. The similarities are not subtle. Each room has thick walls, far beyond what storage or routine maintenance would require. Each room contains copper, plates, channels, or full sheeting, hidden beneath later plaster or paint, as if someone wanted the metal present but not visible. Each room includes a vertical shaft that rises through multiple floors and terminates beneath a tower, dome, or spire. Not beside it, not near it, directly beneath it, aligned to the building's high point like the shaft is aiming for a specific target. And each room contains anchor points, bolt holes, iron brackets, or stone plinths marked by mounting scars, as if something heavy once stood there and was later removed. Then comes the second pattern, the one that matters even more. In every case, the documentation is incomplete. Pages missing from ledgers, blueprints that jump over sections, photographs that exist in two versions, entries that vanish mid-sequence without being crossed out or corrected. Clara builds a comparison chart. She lists the features side by side, forcing the pattern into a format nobody can hand-wave away. Lviv, iron brackets, copper channel, vent stack to dome, ledger line missing. Prague, ceramic tiles, stone plinth with bolt holes, shaft to tower, permit pages removed. Bucharest, copper sheeting, ceramic insulators, radial bolt pattern, records destroyed in a fire. Krakow, layered walls, glass line drain, curved ceiling, aligned with pillar, archive pages cut out. By the time she finishes the last line, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a signature. She searches for more. Within 3 months, she identifies 2 additional cases. One in Vienna, discovered during subway expansion in 1998, and one in Budapest, found behind a false wall during a hotel renovation in 2004. Both were documented internally, then buried in quiet filing systems. Neither discovery was publicly discussed. Both show the same fingerprint: copper elements, vertical shafts, alignment with architectural high points, and records that are missing, contradictory, or strangely incomplete. Clara arranges interviews with the people who found them. A subway engineer in Vienna describes the room as overbuilt for no clear reason. A contractor in Budapest says the space had been sealed and resealed multiple times, like someone kept changing their mind about whether it should exist. She asks each of them the same question. What do you think it was? None can answer with certainty. But all of them agree on one point, and it is not a small one. The rooms were not built carelessly. They were built with precision. They were built like parts of a system, not like leftover corners. They were built to do something specific, and then, deliberately, that purpose was erased. Clara titles her thesis chapter, Infrastructure of Unknown Function, a repeating architectural signature in late 19th century European civic buildings. Her advisor reads it and suggests she soften the language. You're implying a coordinated effort to hide something, he says. That's conspiracy territory. Clara revises nothing. She submits the chapter as written. It is published in a minor academic journal in 2010. 12 people read it. But among those 12 is a physicist in Leipzig who recognizes something in the room descriptions, something that does not belong in ventilation, storage, or routine maintenance. He writes to Clara with a single line. These are not storage rooms. They are residence chambers. The mystery shifts again. Either everyone built the same pointless room in different countries for no reason, or the purpose. It was real, and someone made sure it could not be named. Leipzig, spring 2011. The physicist's name is Dr. Ernst Richter. He specializes in acoustics and structural vibration. He has spent 20 years studying how sound behaves in architectural spaces, concert halls, cathedrals, amphitheaters, places where stone and air become an instrument. He contacts Clara after reading her thesis chapter. His email is brief but unusually precise. The rooms you describe share features common to designed resonance systems. Not accidental, intentional. Clara sends him everything: photographs, measurements, material analyses, notes from the restorations. Ernst studies the package for 2 weeks before he replies. His second email is longer. This time, he does not speak in metaphors. He speaks like a man pointing at fingerprints. He identifies 3 core elements that repeat across every documented chamber. First, vertical channels aligned with tall structures. Ernst explains that these are not random vents. They behave like waveguides, paths meant to carry vibration upward through the building's core. The alignment with towers and domes is not decorative. It is functional. Tall architectural features do more than look impressive. They can act like antennas in a mechanical sense, amplifying, focusing, or transmitting whatever resonance originates below. Second, copper surfaces and ceramic insulators. Copper conducts vibration with minimal energy loss. Ceramic resists electrical interference. Together, they suggest a system designed to manage more than airflow. They suggest controlled interaction between vibration and electricity, acoustic and electromagnetic behavior in the same space. Ernst notes that early radio experiments in the 1890s used similar material combinations. Conductive metals paired with insulating ceramics, arranged to control leakage, noise, and unwanted coupling. Third, anchor points and mounting scars. The bolt. Patterns indicate machinery was once installed. The geometry of those patterns matters. Radial arrangements, perfect squares, repeatable spacing. These are not the marks of shelves or storage racks. They are the scars left by equipment that either rotated or oscillated, machines meant to move, pulse, or vibrate as part of normal operation. Ernst cross-references the measurements with industrial devices from the era. Generators, transformers, dynamos. None match perfectly, but the scale is consistent with apparatus designed to produce energy, or to channel it. His proposal is blunt. The rooms are nodes in a distributed system, not standalone devices, connection points. He compares them to substations in an electrical grid, except this grid appears to transmit something other than standard alternating current. Clara asks the obvious question, what is that something? Ernst admits he does not know, but he offers a framework for testing the idea. If the rooms are resonance, chambers, they should display a consistent set of characteristics, material choices optimized for vibration transfer, not ordinary structural needs. Copper channels, ceramic barriers, glass-lined drains, geometric precision in shaft alignment. The vertical paths are not approximate, they are exact, calculated to connect basement chambers with high points in the building. Evidence of removed equipment, bolt holes, rust stains, mounting plinths. Something was installed, then extracted, leaving only the infrastructure behind. Deliberate concealment after decommissioning, sealed doors, painted over hatches, missing records. If the system were merely obsolete, it would have been dismantled openly. Instead, it was buried, then renamed. Clara circulates Ernst's analysis to the other researchers. Tomasz in Krakow, Eva in Prague, Andrei in Bucharest. Each confirms the core features exist in their documented chambers. Then, each adds details that make the hypothesis harder to dismiss. Eva notes that the Prague chamber's ceramic tiles show microfractures consistent with sustained vibration exposure, fine damage that builds over time when a surface is repeatedly stressed. Andrei discovers that Bucharest's copper sheeting is thicker at points where the metal contacts the stone plinth, as if the design anticipated concentrated force in specific contact zones. Tomasz photographs dust patterns in the Krakow niche, fine particulates settled in concentric rings around the room's center, a classic signature of standing waves shaping where dust can and cannot rest. The rooms are no longer mysteries without context. They are technical spaces with identifiable design logic, and that changes the pressure of the question. If these chambers were built to generate or channel resonance, what was the system meant to do? And why was every trace of its operation removed, page by page, room by room, city by city? Vienna, autumn 2012. A structural consultant named Marcus Adler is hired to assess earthquake retrofitting for a former municipal building constructed in 1887. The building features a decorative clock tower rising 30 meters above street level. Officially, the tower is ornamental, supposedly serving no structural function for the building below. During the inspection, Marcus notices something that does not fit that story. The tower's foundation does not rest on the building's main load-bearing walls. Instead, it sits atop a vertical shaft that descends through the building's core and terminates in the basement. The shaft is hollow. Its interior walls are lined with riveted iron plates, now heavily oxidized. The shaft's diameter is 1 meter, too narrow for human passage, too wide to be explained as simple cable routing. And at the basement level, the shaft opens into a sealed chamber that matches the type documented in Clara's research. Marcus photographs the shaft from top to bottom using a fiber optic camera. The interior surface shows wear patterns, parallel grooves running vertically, like something abrasive repeatedly moved through the space, or, like the shaft itself, vibrated against fixed hardware for years. He contacts Clara. She comes to Vienna with Dr. Ernst Richter. They descend into the basement chamber. The room measures 4 meters square. Copper plates line 3 walls. The 4th wall contains a sealed hatch leading into the vertical shaft. Ernst examines the hatch frame. It shows stress marks consistent with repeated opening and closing, scratches at the latch points, compressed edges around the bolts, suggesting the shaft was accessed regularly during the building's early operational years. Ernst taps the shaft's iron wall with a mallet. The sound rings cleanly, then travels upward, echoing through the entire length like a pipe. He listens, measures the pitch, and does the quick math in his head. His estimate lands around 47 hertz, well within the low-frequency range that shows up in early telecommunications experiments and in certain power transmission tests from the same era. Clara searches the building's archive. She finds a maintenance log from 1892 describing tower apparatus inspection, completed without incident. The following year's log mentions routine examination of vertical channel and basement fixture. Both entries are signed by a chief engineer whose name appears nowhere else in the building's paperwork, not in payroll, not in contracts, not in staff lists. In 1954, a renovation report describes removal of obsolete tower mechanism and sealing of access shaft. The mechanism is not identified. No inventory lists what was removed. No disposal records exist. The contractor's invoice names only basement modifications and structural sealing, as if the most important object in the entire system never deserved a line item. Marcus examines the tower itself. At the apex, beneath the clock face, he finds a circular mounting plate embedded in the stone. The plate has 8 bolt holes arranged in a precise radial pattern. Rust stains bloom outward from each hole, the kind that only forms when iron fixtures sit in place for years. Above that plate, the space is hollow, large enough to hold equipment weighing several hundred kilograms. Whatever once occupied that hollow connected directly to the basement chamber through the vertical shaft, and suddenly the building stops looking like architecture and starts looking like infrastructure. Basement room, hollow shaft, tower apex, a complete circuit. Energy or vibration could travel upward, signals could travel downward, the structure itself becomes the conduit. Ernst measures the building's height and the shaft's dimensions. He checks the acoustic response again. Then he lays out the implication in plain words. At roughly 47 hertz, the entire structure could be driven into sympathetic oscillation by a vibration source placed in the basement chamber. The tower would not be decoration. It would be the amplifier, broadcasting the effect outward, either through the air above the street or through the ground beneath the foundations. Ernst asks Marcus a practical question. Do similar towers exist across Vienna? Marcus provides a list. 17 civic buildings constructed between 1880 and 1910, all featuring decorative towers with no clear functional purpose. Clara checks her database. 12 of those buildings already have documented basement chambers with the same signature: copper, shafts, alignment with the high point, missing pages, soft labels that do not explain the engineering underneath. The towers are not decoration, they are transmission points, and beneath each one, a chamber waits in silence. Riga, winter 2013. A building restorer named Janice. Liepa works on a former trade hall erected in 1889. The hall once hosted merchant exhibitions. Now, it serves as a cultural center. During ceiling repairs on the ground floor, Janice notices something peculiar. The plaster above the main corridor shows circular stress patterns, like pressure had been pushing from below for years. He removes a section of damaged plaster. Behind it, the wooden beams show compression marks and fine cracks radiating outward from a central point. The damage is not structural. The building is stable, but the wood fibers are crushed in a pattern consistent with sustained vibration. Janice descends to the basement. Directly below the damaged beams, he finds a chamber sealed behind brick laid in the 1950s. The brickwork is newer than the surrounding foundation, cleanly bonded like a planned closure, not an emergency patch. He documents the location and requests permission to open it. The chamber is small, 3 meters square. The walls are bare stone. The floor is original tile, unbroken. In the center stands a stone pedestal, 1/2 meter tall, with a circular depression carved into the top surface. The depression is smooth, polished, like something heavy once rested there, and turns slowly over time. Janis runs his hand along the pedestal. It is cool, dry, ordinary. Then he notices the dust. Fine particulate covers the floor, but it is not scattered at random. The dust has settled in concentric rings around the pedestal, each ring perfectly circular, each spaced roughly 10 centimeters from the next. It looks less like neglect and more like a diagram drawn by air. Janis photographs the pattern before he disturbs it. He collects samples. Later, analysis shows the dust is ordinary building sediment, nothing exotic, nothing unusual in composition. But its arrangement is not ordinary. Those rings suggest standing waves, the stable pressure zones that form when vibration reinforces itself in a closed space. Janis contacts Clara and Dr. Ernst Richter. He sends photographs of the dust pattern and the pedestal. Ernst recognizes the signature immediately. Acoustic resonance, sustained over years, possibly decades. Ernst travels to Riga 3 weeks later. He brings a frequency analyzer and a set of tuning forks. Inside the sealed chamber, he strikes a fork calibrated to 50 Hz. The tone blooms, then lingers longer than it should in a space this small. He strikes another at 100 Hz. The resonance becomes even more pronounced. It feels as if the walls are holding the sound, storing it, then releasing it slowly. Ernst places the analyzer on the pedestal and generates a sustained tone at 47 Hz. The device measures reflected sound waves and phase response. Within seconds, the readings show interference patterns consistent with a chamber designed to reinforce specific frequencies. The result is not subtle. This room is not just a leftover space. It is tuned. Ernst asks Janis if anyone reported strange sounds in the building during its operational years. Janis searches local records. He finds an interview from 1906 with a janitor who worked in the trade hall. The janitor mentions a low hum during storms, like the building was breathing. Another reference appears in a merchant's diary from 1898. Peculiar vibration in the lower hall today, strong enough to rattle the glass in the display cases. Neither account describes machinery, neither mentions equipment, but both describe the same thing: sensation. Sound felt more than heard, vibration that seemed to come from the building itself. Ernst measures the vertical shaft above the chamber. It rises through 2 floors and terminates beneath a central cupola. The shaft's interior diameter is 1 meter. Its walls are smooth brick, and the interior shows wear patterns, long, parallel marks, identical to those found in Vienna. The evidence keeps stacking in the same direction. These rooms are not isolated experiments. They are pieces of a design system, built to specific tolerances, tuned to frequencies that leave physical traces long after the machinery is gone. Budapest, spring 2014. Clara Zimmerman receives access to the Hungarian National Archive. She is not searching for what the chambers were anymore. She is searching for the way they disappeared, not the machine, the method. She requests renovation records from 15 buildings constructed between 1880 and 1910. Buildings already known to contain basement chambers with the same signature. The archive delivers 43 folders spanning 1950 to 1965. And as she reads, she realizes the files do not feel random. They feel rehearsed. The documents follow a script. In 12 cases, the renovation reports repeat nearly identical language: removal of obsolete equipment and closure of disused technical spaces. The equipment is never described. No serial numbers, no sketches, no photographs, no disposal receipts exist, no transport forms, no inventory lists. The reports itemize only what was used to seal the chambers: concrete, brick, plaster, materials for hiding, not for documenting. In 9 cases, the chambers are relabeled. A resonance chamber in 1891 becomes a ventilation niche in 1953. An apparatus room in 1888 becomes storage in 1957. A technical installation space in 1895 becomes a utility closet in 1961. The relabeling happens without explanation, as if the original terms were clerical errors that needed to be corrected, like someone was cleaning language, not updating function. In 7 cases, architectural blueprints are amended. The amendments are not dated. They simply appear in newer printings of the same plans produced decades after the buildings, or were constructed. In these updated drawings, the chambers vanish. In their place, blank space, expanded corridors, solid walls where doors once existed. A clean story drawn over a messy truth. Clara photographs each file. She notes the contractors hired for the renovations. 4 companies appear repeatedly across different cities and different years. She traces their histories. All 4 were state-affiliated firms operating in the post-war period. All 4 dissolved between 1968 and 1972. Their archives no longer exist. Then she finds one exception, a contractor's private ledger preserved by his grandson. The ledger contains handwritten notes from a renovation in Pécs, dated 1955. One entry reads, "Basement work completed per instruction. Plinth removed to storage facility. Location unspecified. Copper sheeting salvaged for reclamation. Shaft sealed with poured concrete. Chamber reclassified per directive." The directive is not attached. The storage facility is not named, but the note confirms what Clara suspected. The removals were coordinated, and the materials were not simply thrown away. They were moved. She searches for storage facility records. None reference equipment removed from civic building basements. She requests export logs for salvaged copper. The logs show standard industrial reclamation, nothing that stands out. She asks the grandson if his grandfather ever mentioned the work. He recalls only one comment: strange job, good pay, no questions. Clara maps the timeline. The earliest sealing she can confirm occurs in 1950. The latest occurs in 1965, 15 years, across 6 countries, following the same sequence over and over: remove, relabel, seal, erase. She contacts archivists in Prague, Vienna, Bucharest, and Riga. Each confirms similar patterns. Renovation records from the 1950s repeat coordinated language and avoid specifics. Original plans vanish and are replaced with sanitized versions. Contractor firms dissolve soon after the work is done, as if they were created to finish the job and then disappear with it. One archivist in Prague adds a detail that sharpens the whole picture. She finds a memo dated 1953 referencing standardization of building documentation for municipal properties. The memo originates from a regional planning office that no longer exists. It instructs archivists to update records to reflect current function and to remove outdated technical descriptions that may cause confusion. The memo does not list buildings. It does not name the descriptions to remove, but the timing aligns too perfectly with the chamber closures to ignore. They did not need to burn the past. They only needed to rename it. Clara compiles her findings into a report. She titles it, "Coordinated Decommissioning: Evidence of Systematic Architectural Erasure in Post-War Central Europe." Her advisor refuses to approve it for publication. Too speculative, he says, too accusatory. Clara publishes it independently. It circulates among a small group of researchers. Most dismiss it. Some file it away. One sends her a map. Autumn 2014. The map arrives in Clara's email without explanation. The sender identifies himself only as M. Bauer, a retired urban planner based in Switzerland. The attachment is a digital overlay of Central and Eastern Europe, with 47 locations marked in red. Each marker corresponds to a building constructed between 1875 and 1912. Each building is linked to documented, or strongly suspected, basement chambers that match the signature. Bauer includes coordinates, construction dates, and original functions. Trade halls, municipal offices, telegraph stations, exhibition centers, railway administration buildings. Clara opens the file on her screen. She adds the locations she has already confirmed. The markers cluster. The heaviest concentrations appear in Vienna, Prague, Budapest, and Krakow. Secondary clusters emerge in Leipzig, Riga, Lviv, and Bucharest. Scattered points appear in smaller cities: Brno, Graz, Bratislava, Cluj-Napoca, and 3 outliers sit in Germany, Berlin, Dresden, Hamburg. She stares at the distribution long enough for the obvious question to surface. Why there? The buildings do not follow political borders. They follow networks, railway hubs, telegraph nodes, cities that hosted international exhibitions, places where infrastructure converged and where crowds gathered. Clara contacts Bauer. He responds within hours. He explains that he spent 30 years working on infrastructure modernization projects across Europe. Over that time, he repeatedly encountered the same phrase in engineering notes and renovation chatter. Anomalous basement features in pre-war civic buildings. Most engineers dismissed them as quirks of old construction. Bauer did not. He began documenting the chambers in 1998. He collected blueprints, interviewed contractors, and cross-checked municipal records. By 2010, he had identified 47 buildings with credible evidence of technical rooms that did not fit standard categories. He mapped them, then he kept the research private until he read Clara's report. Clara asks what he thinks the rooms were for. Bauer answers carefully, "I am not a physicist, but I understand infrastructure design. These rooms are nodes. They were built to connect, not to function independently. The question is, connect what?" Clara overlays Bauer's map with rail lines from the 1880s and 1890s. The correlation is hard to ignore. Nearly every marked building sits within 2 kilometers of a major rail junction. She adds telegraph route maps from the same period. The alignment tightens again. Many of the buildings sit near intersections where multiple telegraph lines converged, points of relay, exchange, control. She shares the layered map with Dr. Ernst Richter. Ernst adds another layer. In the 1890s, several European cities conducted atmospheric electricity measurements as part of meteorological studies. The survey stations were often placed in civic buildings with tall towers, good vantage points, good exposure, good height. Ernst cross-references known station locations with Clara's map. 12 matches. Now, the pattern is no longer just architectural. It is infrastructural. The rooms cluster where power mattered. Rail access, telegraph networks, and electromagnetic monitoring. Places where civic authority and technical infrastructure sat in the same buildings, under the same roofs. Clara presents the map at a small academic conference in Munich. She describes the distribution as non-random and infrastructure adjacent. She suggests the chambers were components of a system designed to interface with existing networks, rail, telegraph, and possibly early wireless experimentation. The audience pushes back. One historian calls it pattern-seeking in incomplete data. Another says the chambers could be coincidence, regional building, quirks that happen to repeat because construction fashions spread. But after the talk, a metallurgist approaches Clara. He worked on corrosion analysis for old copper wiring, recovered from civic buildings in the 1990s. He tells her something he always found strange. Copper recovered from certain basement chambers showed isotopic signatures inconsistent with standard European smelting practices of the period. He does not claim he knows what it means, only that the copper came from somewhere else. Clara adds the detail to her notes. Now she has a map that lines up with rail and telegraph networks, 12 overlaps with electromagnetic survey stations, and copper that may not even belong to the supply chain of the time. The rooms sit where crowds gathered and where power mattered. Graz, winter 2015. An archivist named Helmut Steiner contacts Clara with news. He claims he has found what he calls the perfect document, a complete renovation report from 1956 detailing work on a former customs house in Graz. The building was constructed in 1883. The report describes the discovery and closure of a basement chamber that matches the known signature. Unlike the other files Clara has seen, this one is complete. Photographs, contractor invoices, material specifications, a step-by-step explanation. Helmut believes it may finally answer what the rooms were originally built for. Clara travels to Graz. Helmut presents the file. It is 63 pages, professionally bound, with official stamps on every section. The report states that during foundation reinforcement, workers discovered an undocumented technical room containing obsolete apparatus. Then it goes further. It describes the apparatus as a cylindrical resonance device of unknown manufacture, approximately 2 meters in height, mounted on a stone base with electromagnetic shielding. The report includes photographs. The device appears in 3 images, one showing it mounted inside the chamber, one showing it partially disassembled, and one showing the empty mounting base after removal. The photographs are clear, well lit, and properly labeled. The report states the device was removed on March 12, 1956, and transported to a state facility for analysis. The chamber was sealed on March 19, 1956. The contractor's invoice lists materials used: concrete, steel reinforcement bars, brickwork. Everything is accounted for. Everything reads like an engineer's dream: complete, tidy, final. Clara studies the document for 2 hours. It is the most thorough record she has ever seen. Then she checks the building's construction history. The customs house was built in 1883. The renovation report is dated 1956. Yet the report claims the chamber was constructed during building expansion in 1924. Clara goes still. She returns to the photographs. She examines the brickwork visible behind the device. The pattern, the bonding, the mortar style. Everything looks like work from the 1880s, not the 1920s. She checks the expansion records. In 1924, a 3rd floor was added. No basement work is documented, no excavation, no foundation expansion, no new technical rooms. So, Clara requests the original architectural plans from 1883. The plans show the basement chamber in the exact location where the report says it was found. It is labeled apparatus installation, lower level. The chamber existed from the building's inception. 41 years before the report claims it was built, Helmut retrieves more files. He finds a city inspection log from 1891 mentioning routine maintenance of basement technical equipment in the customs house. Another entry from 1897 describes replacement of worn components in resonance. Apparatus. Both entries predate 1924 by decades. Clara returns to the 1956 report and reads it again, slower this time. The ink is consistent. The stamps appear genuine. The signatures match officials known from that period. But the dates do not work. Either the report is falsified or the earlier records are wrong. Yet neither set shows obvious signs of forgery. No mismatched paper, no strange ink, no clumsy corrections. She contacts a forensic document analyst. He examines the 1956 report under magnification. The paper is authentic, manufactured in Austria between 1954 and 1958. The typewriter matches models standard in government offices of the period. The ink shows no signs of chemical alteration. The report is real, and yet its central claim contradicts photographic and archival evidence that the chamber existed decades earlier than stated. Helmut offers one possible explanation. The report may have been written truthfully, based on false information. If contractors were told the chamber dated to 1924, they would write that date down without questioning it. The paperwork would remain authentic. The stamps would be real, the signatures would be real, while the lie would sit safely inside the record like a planted seed. A deception built into the archive itself. Clara adds the Graz file to her collection. The perfect document is perfectly wrong, and once that door opens, a harder question follows. If the paperwork cannot be trusted, what else cannot be trusted? Brno, Spring 2016. Clara stops publishing. She keeps researching, but privately. The Graz document changed something. Not just her reading of the evidence, but her sense of what she is asking people to accept as real. She meets a restorer named Pavel Novak in a cafe near the old city center. Pavel worked on a chamber discovery in Brno in 2002. He documented the space, filed his report, and moved on to other projects. But he never stopped thinking about it. You work with old buildings long enough, he says. You develop a sense for what belongs and what doesn't. That room didn't belong. Not in the way the walls were built, not in the way the space was hidden. It felt deliberate. Pavel describes the isolation of finding something nobody wants to handle out loud. He showed his photographs to colleagues. Most shrugged. Some told him he was overthinking it. One said it to his face. It's just old construction. Stop looking for mysteries. But Pavel could not reconcile what he saw with what he was told. The copper channels were too precise. The shaft alignment was too exact. And the missing documentation was too convenient to be an accident. I felt crazy for a while. he admits. Like I was the only one who thought it mattered. Clara asks if he ever spoke with supervisors about it. Pavel nods. Once, he says, they told me it was probably ventilation, or some early electrical experiment. And when I pointed out what didn't match those explanations, they stopped answering my questions. He describes the kind of silence that does the most damage. Not hostility, not anger, not even open dismissal, just polite redirection, a change of subject, a meeting that never gets scheduled, a reply that never comes. Eventually, he stopped bringing it up. Clara travels to Krakow to visit an elderly woman named Irena Kowalska. Irena's grandfather worked as a building superintendent in the 1930s and 1940s. He maintained several civic structures, including one with a documented chamber. Before he died in 1963, he told Irena's mother, "There are rooms in those buildings no one talks about. We were told they were for storage, but I saw what came out of them before the war. That was not storage." Irena's mother never asked what he meant. Irena only learned the story years later, after her mother passed. She tried to find records of her grandfather's work. The employment logs listed his name and the buildings he serviced. They did not describe his duties. He was ashamed, Irena says quietly, not of what he did, of what he couldn't say. He carried that silence until he died. Clara asks if Irena knows what her grandfather saw. Irena shakes her head. Only that it frightened him, she says, and that he was told never to speak of it. The same pattern repeats in other cities. A janitor in Vienna who refused to enter certain basement rooms. A clerk in Prague who noticed discrepancies in files, then got reassigned after she reported them. An engineer in Budapest who designed ceiling work for chambers and later burned his own project files, as if he wanted the evidence to disappear twice. Knowledge becomes shame. Shame becomes silence. Clara sits in her apartment in Berlin, surrounded by folders, maps, and photographs. She thinks about the rooms still sealed behind walls, the copper still hidden under plaster, the shafts still rising through buildings where nobody looks up and thinks to ask why. The rooms are not gone. They are waiting. And the people who once understood what they were for, people who touched the locks, filed the reports, poured the concrete, chose silence over explanation. Dresden, autumn 2016. Clara receives a package from a demolition contractor in Dresden. Inside is a small brass plate, roughly 10 centimeters square, heavily tarnished but intact. The plate was removed from a building slated for demolition, discovered embedded in a basement wall during asbestos abatement. It bears an engraved mark, a circular pattern with radiating lines, plus a manufacturer's stamp in German script. The text reads, Resonanzeinheit, Nummer 47, Wien 1891, nicht entfernen. Resonance Unit Number 47, Vienna, 1891. Do not remove. The contractor includes a note. Thought you might want this. Found it behind 3 layers of plaster. Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide it. Clara contacts a metallurgist. The brass composition matches Austrian industrial production from the 1890s. The engraving technique fits precision manufacturing of that period. The plate is authentic. She searches for references to Resonanzeinheit in Viennese industrial records. She finds nothing. The term does not appear in patent filings, equipment catalogs, or manufacturer directories. Yet the plate exists, marked and numbered, suggesting it belonged to a series. 47 units, at minimum. Dr. Ernst Richter examines the radiating line pattern. He recognizes it immediately, a wave propagation diagram, the kind used to visualize how vibration spreads from a central point. The pattern is not decorative, it is technical notation. Then other fragments surface. A contractor in Riga uncovers a section of copper channel during pipe replacement. It is marked with etched frequency notes, 50 Hz optimal, 47 Hz sustained. A museum in Budapest acquires a stone mounting block salvaged from a demolished building. Its surface shows bolt patterns and the faint outline of text worn almost smooth. Installation. Protocol. Approved 18. In Prague, Eva Moravkova finds a photograph tucked inside a ledger from 1898. The image shows workers installing equipment in a basement chamber. The equipment is cylindrical, mounted vertically. with copper coils visible along its exterior. On the back of the photograph, someone wrote in pencil, "Technical installation complete. System operational. No further records required." The photograph was never filed officially. It was hidden inside a ledger that was misfiled and forgotten, quiet enough to survive. Clara catalogs each discovery. None provides a complete answer, but together they confirm what the cleaned records try to deny. The rooms held real equipment, manufactured to specifications, numbered in sequence, and installed across multiple cities as part of a coordinated plan. The strongest evidence is not sitting in archives. It is in the walls, in the brass plates, in the copper fragments, in the photographs that were never meant to survive. Small proofs, but proof nonetheless. Berlin, winter 2017. Clara organizes a private symposium. She invites 12 researchers, architects, physicists, archivists, metallurgists, people who studied the chambers independently and kept running into the same wall. They meet in a university seminar room for 3 days. The goal is not to solve the mystery. The goal is to define what can be said with confidence, without exaggeration, without drama, without leaning on faith. Dr. Ernst Richter presents first. He does not claim certainty. He lays out what the physical evidence allows, and only that. He outlines 3 possible functions that fit the features they keep seeing. First, air and climate systems that go beyond conventional heating. Many chambers show airflow geometry, vertical channels, and pressure distribution shapes consistent with large-scale ventilation. But the copper shielding and frequency notes suggest something more sophisticated than simple air movement. Ernst proposes a possibility. These rooms may have conditioned air using resonance to create pressure differentials, moving air without visible mechanical fans, using vibration and geometry instead of blades and motors. Second, acoustic or vibrational transmission. The tuned chambers, the mounting points for rotating or oscillating equipment, and the consistent alignment with towers all support this interpretation. Ernst suggests the system could have transmitted low-frequency vibration through structures, possibly for signaling across distance or for synchronizing multiple sites. He notes that early work around wireless communication did not follow one clean path. Before radio dominated, researchers tried all kinds of approaches, some mechanical, some electrical, some hybrid, anything that could carry a signal reliably. Third, early electrical distribution or experimental energy systems, ceramic insulators, copper channels, and electromagnetic shielding indicate electrical design, but the scale and configuration do not match standard power systems of the period. Ernst proposes that the chambers may have housed experimental devices testing alternative methods of energy transmission, conversion, or storage, systems that never became mainstream or did not remain public. Then he pauses and makes the most important point. These are not mutually exclusive. The system may have served multiple purposes at the same time. Tomasz Kowalski adds the architectural perspective. He emphasizes that these rooms were built into civic buildings deliberately, not inserted later as a retrofit. They sit in prime structural positions, beneath towers, aligned with load-bearing columns, integrated into the building's core. That placement matters. It suggests the chambers were part of the original design logic, fundamental, not optional. Eva Moravkova presents the erasure pattern. Across cities, the decommissioning follows. The same sequence. Remove equipment, relabel the space, adjust drawings, alter or thin out records, seal access. The repetition is the point. It suggests coordinated decisions and centralized direction, not isolated choices by individual building managers. The group debates for hours. They argue details. They challenge each other's assumptions. They try to break the weak points because if the claim cannot survive internal pressure, it will not survive the outside world. But by the final day, they reach agreement on what they can state honestly. The chambers exist. Their construction is intentional and technically sophisticated. They were decommissioned systematically. Their original purpose was deliberately obscured, and the physical evidence points towards systems designed to manage vibration, airflow, or energy in ways that are not fully explained by the standard story of 19th century civic construction. Clara writes the summary. She strips out speculation. She keeps only documented facts and measured possibilities. What the rooms show, what the records hide, and what the materials imply. The symposium report is published in a technical journal. 60 people read it. Most move on, but a few do not. A few begin searching their own cities. And the question spreads quietly. London, spring 2018. A restoration architect named Thomas Beckett contacts Clara after reading the symposium report. He says he has found a chamber in London, beneath a former exhibition hall built in 1889, near the site of the original Crystal Palace. The chamber matches the signature: copper-lined walls, a vertical shaft that once rose into a tower that no longer exists. A stone mounting base scarred by bolt marks, like something heavy was anchored there and taken away. But Thomas found something else, something that makes the discovery harder to dismiss. A maintenance log from 1894. It was never archived officially. It surfaced in a private collection of building documents sold at an estate auction, mixed in with receipts and old correspondence. Paper that survived because nobody filed it where it belonged. The log describes routine inspections of synchronization apparatus across 3 London sites. Each site is identified by building name and a numerical designation: Site 7, Site 12, Site 19. One line mentions coordination with continental installations, but gives no locations, no cities, no list. Only the phrase, written as if the reader was expected to already know. Thomas sends photographs. Clara compares the London chamber to the European sites already documented. The dimensions differ slightly. The copper patterns show regional variation, but the core elements are unmistakable: the shaft, the mounting base, the tuning notes, the same design language repeating in a new country. Clara contacts researchers outside her original circle. Reports begin arriving from places she did not expect. A civil engineer in St. Petersburg describes a sealed chamber found during metro construction in 2015, beneath a building erected in 1896. The room contained unidentifiable mounting fixtures and a shaft rising to a structure demolished in the 1930s. An archivist in Copenhagen discovers references to technical installations in a customs house built in 1887. The installations were removed in 1951. The removal was overseen by external specialists, whose agency is not named anywhere in the files. A university researcher in Zagreb identifies 3 buildings with basement anomalies matching the pattern. All 3 were constructed between 1888 and 1905. All 3 underwent renovations in the 1950s that sealed basement sections with almost no documentation. Clara updates her map. The chambers extend beyond Central Europe. The network is larger than she ever allowed herself to estimate. And the distribution starts to make a different kind of sense. The sites do not cluster only around rail and telegraph hubs. They cluster around cities that hosted international exhibitions, world's fairs, and industrial expos during the 1880s and 1890s. Places where new systems were shown, tested, compared, and quietly adopted. Clara traces the exhibition dates: Vienna, 1873, Paris, 1889, Chicago, 1893, Brussels, 1897, Paris, 1900. Cities that staged technological progress like theater. Cities where engineers and inventors gathered. Cities where inventions were demonstrated publicly before certain versions of them were implemented privately. Dr. Ernst Richter reviews the expanded data. He notices a second timeline tightening around the chambers. Many of the builds and upgrades cluster in the peak years of wireless transmission. Experimentation. 1888 to 1902. Hertz demonstrated electromagnetic waves in 1888. Marconi transmitted across the English Channel in 1899. Tesla pursued resonance experiments throughout the 1890s. The chambers appear in the same era, in cities linked by the same networks, built with the same repeating logic, which raises a brutal, simple possibility. This was not a local curiosity. It was a system. And a lost system does not vanish everywhere at once. It breaks. It gets dismantled in phases. It leaves bones. The bones stretch across borders. The silence stays consistent. But the rooms are still there, behind plaster and brick, numbered and networked like pieces of something larger than any single building was ever meant to admit. Prague, autumn 2019. Clara returns to the chamber beneath the National Technical Museum, the room where Eva Moravkova first noticed the missing ledger line. The space has been unsealed temporarily for structural assessment. Clara obtains permission to document it one final time. She descends alone, carrying a camera and a notebook. The chamber is exactly as Eva described it years ago. Ceramic tiles, unblemished. A stone plinth scarred with bolt holes. A shaft rising upward into darkness. Nothing has changed, yet everything feels different now. Clara places her hand on the plinth. The stone is cold, inert, dead weight. But the bolt holes remain precise, machine cut, evenly spaced, positioned with intent. Someone designed this, someone built it, someone used it. She photographs the copper channels one more time. She measures the shaft diameter again. She sketches the tile pattern, not because she needs more data, because she wants to remember what certainty feels like inside a space built from questions. Above her, the city keeps moving. Trams rattle past. Tourists photograph the castle. Students argue in cafes. Life continues, unaware that beneath the streets, beneath stone, plaster, and paperwork, chambers still wait in silence. Clara thinks about the people who found these rooms first. Pavel, who felt alone with his discovery. Irina's grandfather, who carried shame instead of answers. The contractors who sealed chambers and never wrote down what they removed. The archivists who saw the gaps and were told, politely, firmly, to stop looking. She thinks about what was lost. Not only the equipment, not only the documents, the knowledge itself, the understanding of what these rooms did, why they were built into civic buildings, what kind of system they served. And yet, the rooms remain. Clara opens her notebook and writes, "We may not know the full purpose, but we can prove the question is real. And if these rooms had a function, someone once depended on it." She stands for a moment longer, listening to the quiet that feels too organized to be natural. Then she climbs the stairs and emerges into afternoon light. The museum is closing. Visitors drift out through heavy doors. Staff lock up galleries. The building exhales into evening. Below them, the chamber rests in darkness. Tomorrow, the structural team will seal it again. Fresh concrete, new plaster. The room will disappear, again, as it has before, as it was always meant to. But this time, someone remembers. This time, the record exists. History did not erase the rooms. It erased the sentence that explained them. And now, quietly, carefully, that sentence is being written again. One fragment, one photograph, one brass plate at a time. The mystery remains unsolved, but it is no longer invisible. The rooms are waiting, and finally, someone is listening.